So I've had CLL for 11 years and very well, no treatment. I'm a very keen gardener. Should I still be doing this? What do you think, audience? Yes. Of course you bloody should. Can I handle manure? Why not? Do I need to wash my hands? Of course you bloody do afterwards. Take pressure precautions. If you're on chemotherapy and your neutrophils are low, you do need to be slightly careful in the garden with scratching yourself or rose thorns or whatever, because your neutrophils are low. Those are people on the FCR type treatment. You just need to be careful, so be slightly wary if you're on active chemotherapy doing anything. Get the bloody grandchildren out there for once, and the children, and do the garden for you, because Grandad's just had his treatment, so you lot can do it. Absolutely. Back to therapy. I'm a bit of a gardener. It's how I relax. Well, I have had complaints of the neighbours who I was arguing with one day. And I was actually arguing myself. I was rehearsing the argument with the hospital manager for Monday. And trying to think how to get the words right without being sacked. Gardening's wonderful for everyone. After 2 years on Watch and Wait, my partner may need to start treatment for new targeted therapy, approved by NICE. That'll be venetoclax, obinutuzumab, or acalabrutinib is available this summer. Could this be available privately to treat with, and how would one gain access to it, please? No health insurance. So in fact, in the private sector, ibrutinib is licensed for upfront therapies if you're over 65, but I know full well in the private sector, people have been using ibrutinib upfront. Even if you've got insurance, they will do that. If you haven't got insurance, then you're probably going to have to pay the full whack, which is £100,000 per patient per year. So, let's say NICE approve October, and there you are in August. Your disease is progressing. Thank God you got grandchildren. You can sell one of them and pay for your ibrutinib for 2 months till it becomes available on the NHS. At last, the grandchildren would come in useful. It's a really difficult one, to be honest. The alternative, you don't want to leave it too long. If you need treatment, you need treatment. You don't want to deny yourself treatment. But again, speak to your doctor about when do you think NICE will approve and is it safe to wait. Let's say the doctor says it's not safe to wait and I think you need treatment. You could have a conversation, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you give me chlorambucil obinutuzumab that may hold it for a while until the new things become available. You could have FCR, but it's a bit of a jump maybe. So I would barter with my consultants. If I knew these drugs were coming and I was falling short by a few months, also say I'd sell a grandchild to pay for it. How can we get a referral to a CLL specialist? I'd like to see one when I need treatment. I have heart failure and arthritis. Again, one of the things is we're not just treating CLL, we're treating the patient who have comorbidities. Everybody is different. Is there any advantage in seeing a CLL specialist? I would say yes, wouldn't I? Especially now I don't do many clinics. I can easily say yes and go and see the person doing them. Of course, you can ask for a second opinion anytime. You're perfectly entitled to that. You either need your GP to send you to another hospital or the doctor looking after you to send you to it. Most hospitals won't see you as a second opinion without a letter from the GP or the doctor looking after you at the time. But you're perfectly entitled to do that. What are your thoughts regarding LDEND? Naltrexone low dose to normalise the immune system. So, I'm not sure what LDN is, I presume it's naltrexone. There's no evidence anything normalises your immune system in CLL. But again, if it doesn't cost you much money, if it makes you feel good about things, why not? It almost certainly isn't going to do any harm, but you do need to be careful with these immune stimulants and this sort of thing. There's a little business out there. And in CLL, what people don't realise, although the immune system is dysfunctional, I use the word dysfunctional, it's actually switched on in an abnormal way. And if you stimulate it more, there's a chance you may actually make things worse. So there's no evidence these things actually make any difference. So do speak to your doctor about things like that, because it may potentially make some things worse. The truth of the matter is CLL. The CLL cell can only divide if it's next to a T lymphocyte. It can't do it on its own. And if you're stimulating those T lymphocytes, they make more growth factors for your CLL cells. And that's why you need to be slightly careful with these sort of things. This is a Mauritius setting. The CLL patient had RCOP, so that's rituximab, cyclophosphamide, vincristine treatment. Last treatment, October 2014 or 19. So, look, is there a doctor in the house? Because that handwriting looks suspiciously...
Sorry, I'm a lawyer.
Oh! Well, rule number 1 for a doctor, never speak to lawyers. Is it October 2019? So we're basically talking 3 months. Over December, January, lymphocyte count has doubled, and Mission Oncology is recommending bendamustine with rituximab as second line. Any reason for not doing it? Well, 2 things. First of all, is how many lymphocyte counts have been done through December, January? If you had coughs and colds, of course the white count's going up, is meant to do that. If you're pretty well and it's going up, you've basically failed RCOP therapy within 2-3 months of finishing it. Bendamustine rituximab will probably work for a relatively short while. Those are the sort of patients we would automatically be sticking on ibrutinib, because you're replacing the chemotherapy with the chemotherapy. And if you're resistant to one, you tend to be resistant to the others. So bendamustine rituximab, depending on the healthcare system and the drugs available, that may be the best available, BR, and it's better than RCOP. RCOP, was Mauritius French? Was it, pardon?
French, then Britain.
Was it French? Because RCOP is very much a French regimen. We don't use it in Britain at all. The members of French-derived doctor gave it. Really given fludarabine, but bendamustine's a pretty good second choice of it. But if you could, I'd go for ibrutinib or venetoclax, but it may just not be available. It's the truth of the matter. As a second-line treatment, would you suggest ibrutinib or venetoclax with rituximab? Well, thanks a bunch. There's no evidence comparing the two, so you can't say one is better than the other. What I tend to do with patients, because you can use either, ibrutinib is continuous therapy. You're never meant to stop it unless the disease wakes up or you get toxicity. So if people are working, then I tend to say, if you have ibrutinib, it's almost certain you get no toxicity and you'll manage to carry on working. Maybe you want that. The downside of long-term ibrutinib is about 25% of patients will develop high blood pressure with it. And you have to take it every day, and it's associated 5% or so with an arrhythmia of the heart, a thing called atrial fibrillation, which can be a nuisance. Venetoclax with rituximab is much more likely to give you neutropenia, infection, and you miss work. But it is 2 years and stop. So I tend to sit there and ask the patient which are the ones they want, which of the two. You know, sit on the fence, which we call it now, doing a Jeremy. Sit there and let the patient decide. But discuss it fully with your doctor about the pros and cons and rights and wrongs. Either will do the job probably perfectly well. So it's not a bad choice to have. Had FCR reached MRD negative, currently very healthy, just thinking of the future, or will there be a better, newer drug? If you've got mutated VH, you may be cured. Whoever this person is with FCR. So when you say they're better, newer drugs, first of all, you don't need anything now. If you do need it in the future, I think the data suggests we will have better drugs. We have them already available to us if the disease should wake up. But fingers crossed it doesn't. Are antibiotics appropriate for colds as only viral infections? The problem with colds it's called to have habit of going on your chest. So while you're just snuffling away, I usually say to patients, don't worry about that. The moment green stuff or yellow stuff starts appearing, that's bacteria. Green or yellow stuff means the neutrophils are dying, it's pussy. And neutrophils usually fight bacteria. So the moment it becomes off-coloured is usually when I tell patients to start their antibiotics. So that's why usually patients have them. If it starts turning green or yellowy, that's when you start them. Am I concerned about 2025 when ibrutinib comes off patent? That's a very interesting question. I do a lot of laboratory research in CLL. It's getting more and more difficult to get research monies to pay for research in CLL. And that's because they think it's problem solved. That between obinutuzumab, venetoclax, acalabrutinib, ibrutinib, zanubrutinib, timerbootinib, bispecific antibodies, we've already got treatments. If they don't cure, they'll keep people going forever and ever. Therefore, there's no new market. If ibrutinib drops in price, there's no new market. And that's why most big pharma are not looking at drugs for CLL anymore. So on one level, it's a nice problem to have, because these money people, if they thought there was still money in it, they'd be after us. So yeah, the new development of drugs will dry up, is the truth of the matter. But maybe we've got enough tools in the box to do the job anyway. We're not quite there yet. We certainly haven't proven we can do the job with the tools we've got in the box. But yes, it's a bit of a worry that we're already seeing the money dry up from big commercial pharma and research bodies. There's other cancers they want to invest their efforts in.
And is that just in this country?
Oh, that's worldwide. That's global. I mean, the new kid on the block is, the new BTK inhibitor is zanubrutinib, which is Beigene, B-E-I-G-E-N-E. Guess where that comes from? China. The Chinese are about to arrive in global pharma. They're going to be very, very disruptive across the patch. They can do studies phenomenally cheaper than we can. They just tell their patients, this is what you're bloody having. Yeah, when you get out of prison, this is what you're... So the Chinese effect hasn't arrived yet. So it may be pessimistic. The Chinese may have things for the future, because they can do the studies actually relatively cheaper than the GSKs, AstraZenecas, Roche, etc., etc. So it's watch this space with the impact of the Chinese arriving.
How about the Gilead trial?
Yeah, so timerbootinib is another BTK inhibitor. First of all, there was ibrutinib, then came timerbootinib, then came acalabrutinib, and now along is coming zanubrutinib, and there's other ones coming as well. So timerbootinib was the second one, and basically, I don't think it's going to be licensed, because they've made not the best of jobs getting it from the trial to the market. And now the market is shrinking rapidly. I don't think they'll even bother getting it licensed.
But we'll carry on with it then.
Well, that's a very good question. So those patients in the study, the company basically gave us notice they were going to stop supplying us with the drug. We've got some patients on it 5 years who are really, really well. There was a row between the British haematologists and the company, and they've now relented and say we can have it for another 6 years free for those patients still responding. But yeah, the threat was in December they weren't going to produce it anymore, but that's gone. But that's an example where they made a bit of a mess of getting it to market, and now it's too late. The competition is too much. There's no point in spending a few 100 million more trying to get it over the line, because the market's going to shrink. The BTK market, the ibrutinib market in the world, is about £3 billion a year for one drug. Everyone wants to get hold of it. Once ibrutinib comes off patent, that'll probably drop down to a few 100 million a year, and therefore all the other players will drop out.
What about CAR-T?
Yeah. What about CAR-T? Well, the data to date suggests that CAR-T is not great for CLL. And the reason for that, we think, is because the T cells... So for those who don't know what CAR-T is, if you ask people who's had cancer, the answer is we probably all have. But our immune system removes cancer cells every single day. Every day. That's the job of the immune system. So those people who've got cancers because their immune system has failed, in reality. So what CAR-T is, you take off the cells called T lymphocytes. CLL is a disease of B lymphocytes. Your other one's called T lymphocytes. And you engineer them in a lab to kill off your CLL or lymphoma cells or acute leukemia cells. It doesn't work in CLL very well at all compared to other diseases. And that's because the T cells are not normal in CLL. They are normal in other types of cancer. They are not normal in CLL. And that's because your CLL cell is switching them off. And you can't switch them back on. So I don't think CAR-T will make much of an impact. CAR-T is £400,000 per patient per treatment. It makes a ibrutinib look like a bargain. So I don't think we'll see CAR-T in CLL. I haven't touched on here, but bispecific antibodies, what they do is switch on your T lymphocytes in a different way and bind them to CLL cell. Those studies are just starting. They, I think, will work amazingly as well. They're not a chemotherapy. So I don't think there'll be a role for CAR-T. But if everything was exhausted now and I had nothing left to me, opportunity, then I would try CAR-T if I had to. But the evidence it's going to actually make an impact, I think, is very slim, and I don't think it will happen. We've got better alternatives, is the truth of the matter. So there's basically two studies, the David study and the Flare study. The David study has reported some data showing, again, you knock the disease lower and quicker than any other treatment we've ever had. Whether they'll be able to license it as a combination is better than FCR or whatever. Time will tell, but I think that data will be with us in a couple of years. Flare probably won't read out till 2022. So probably about 2022, 2023 will be Flare before we know, by which time it's going to have to be phenomenally better than ibrutinib when the price of ibrutinib plummets in 2025. Given a free reign, all the money in the world, let's say I was going to say married to Paul McCartney, that's not going to happen. Married to someone rich and famous, and money wasn't an option, I'd probably go for venetoclax, ibrutinib up front myself at this moment in time, but there's not the evidence to show that's better, but there's certainly indications it's the most effective combination we've had ever. That's not quite the same as you do better in the long run. But yeah, money wasn't a problem. So ibrutinib, we don't officially know because it's a dirty secret. If you're buying it on the open market, North America, it's £100,000 per patient per year. People think that NICE, what's called a quality of life years, their threshold is around £35,000 per patient per year. So we think that's what the UK is paying, about that amount of money. When I speak to young doctors, just got their first wage packet, and you say, you're now a taxpayer. How much do you think you'd be willing to pay tax for treatment? How much do you think we pay in the UK to keep people alive a year? And they typically say £1,000 or £2,000. No, we're prepared to pay £35,000 for an individual person in this country to keep a person alive a year. And that don't happen probably anywhere else on the planet.
How accurate do you think the process of bone marrow aspiration is in terms of measuring minimum residual disease in the bone marrow?
Yeah, see, when we had chemotherapy, all the evidence showed the more you clear the disease from the blood in the marrow, and minimal residual disease negative means we can't detect it at the level of 1 cell in 10,000, you did better. That is being the dominant. It made it sense to everyone. The more you've killed off, the longer it will take to come back, if it comes back at all. Does MRD negative mean it's just below your threshold of detection, or does it mean it's gone forever? The thing that's put the spanner in the works is ibrutinib, because you never get MRD negative with ibrutinib, but you can still be alive and perfectly well at 8 years. So that question of does it matter, it's in the context of the therapy you're having. Instinctively, would I rather have a bone marrow saying there's I'm MRD negative than have a lymphocyte count of 10 and on ibrutinib at 8 years? Instinctively you think, I'd rather it was negative, but actually it's a bit illogical, so I'm going to conflict with myself there. Even though there's no evidence, I'd probably rather be MRD negative. But would I really want the marrow? I haven't seen some of the doctors do them. I haven't seen some of the patients' reactions. What would I be like? Would I trust a doctor if I'm lying on my side with my trousers half down with a needle and I don't know what he's up to? Maybe I'd go for the ibrutinib and sod the MRD negative story. Yeah, maybe I'll have the ibrutinib after all. Anything else, anyone? Thank you very much. Thanks, Lewis, for the invitation. Thank you.